In aviation, trust is everything. Mistakes aren't just costly, they can be life-threatening. Captain Maya Cole is a name that carries weight in the skies. She's a seasoned pilot, admired for her talent and resilience in an industry where breaking barriers is no small feat. At 42, she's earned her stripes, commanding respect from peers and leading flights with confidence. But like everyone, Maya has a side of her life she keeps locked away, hidden even from those closest to her. On her team is co-pilot Ethan Reed. He's sharp, ambitious, and just 31 years old, with a reputation for sticking to the rules no matter what. Ethan's a rising star in the airline, known for his dedication and high standards. While his professionalism earns him respect, it also makes him difficult to work with at times. For Maya, his rigid approach to work feels like both an asset and a challenge, creating an underlying tension that quietly shapes their partnership. On the surface, Maya and Ethan seem like the perfect team, steady, skilled, and reliable. But their differences go beyond personality. Beneath the surface, there's a growing friction, one that's about to be tested by a secret neither of them is prepared for. What happens when trust is broken in a world where it's the foundation of everything? This is where their story begins. Maya Cole is a picture of professionalism on the outside, but her personal life tells a different story. Behind her composed demeanor, she is involved in a secret relationship with Sheikh Amir Al-Zayed, a powerful and influential figure. Their relationship began innocently enough small conversations during official airline events, but it quickly grew into something more. For Maya, this affair offered a brief escape from the pressures of her demanding career. The long hours, the constant judgment, and the stress of being in a male-dominated industry left her craving connection. Amir's charm and attention provided the emotional break she didn't realize she needed. But this relationship came with risks. In her world, secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect them, and this one could jeopardize everything she has worked so hard to build. Maya thought she had everything under control. She kept her personal life hidden, conducting her relationship with Amir through whispered calls and discreet meetings during layovers. But in a field as tightly monitored as aviation, every move counts, and a single misstep could unravel her carefully constructed life. This secret wasn't just about her personal happiness, it could threaten her career and reputation if exposed. And the cracks in her guarded world were about to show. As Maya and Ethan prepared for their next flight, the professional tension between them was impossible to ignore. Ethan approached his work with his usual precision, checking every detail twice and expecting the same from others. Maya, seasoned and confident, followed the routine without breaking her stride. She respected Ethan's skills, but often found his rigid approach draining. To her, the job wasn't just about following rules, it was about adapting and surviving in a high-pressure world. Their conversations were polite but distant, filled with short professional exchanges. Maya's experience gave her a calm confidence, while Ethan's determination to prove himself made him sharper and more focused. Yet, their different outlooks on work left an unspoken gap between them. As they boarded the aircraft and prepared for the 14-hour flight ahead, Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of the secrets she carried. She maintained her composure, but the pressure of keeping her personal and professional lives separate was growing. For Ethan, the cockpit was a place of clarity and order. For Maya, it was a delicate balancing act, and she was running out of room to maneuver. The flight started smoothly, with both Maya and Ethan focusing on their roles. The hum of the engines and the routine announcements made everything feel normal. As the hours passed, the cockpit settled into a calm rhythm, and the two pilots worked side by side with professional ease. But that calm wouldn't last long. Maya's phone buzzed unexpectedly during the flight. A quick glance at the screen revealed a message from Amir. It was short and harmless on the surface, but the sight of his name made her tense. She placed the phone down quickly, hoping it would go unnoticed. Unfortunately for her, Ethan's sharp eyes caught the name on the screen. Amir Al-Zayed, Ethan said casually, his tone neutral. Quite a notable figure. Maya's heart skipped, but she kept her face steady. He's a friend of the airline, she replied coolly, brushing off the comment. Ethan didn't push further, but his observation lingered in the air, creating an unspoken tension between them. The moment passed, but the shift was undeniable. Ethan's curiosity was piqued, and Maya knew she had let her guard slip. For the rest of the flight, she remained composed, but the unease had taken hold. Ethan might not have said more, but it was clear he was starting to piece things together, and Maya's secret no longer felt safe. After the flight, Ethan couldn't shake the unease he felt. Maya's calm response to his comment about Amir seemed too polished, too rehearsed. Something about it didn't sit right with him. Ethan wasn't the type to ignore red flags, especially when it came to the reputation of the airline and the integrity of their team. Later, while reviewing routine reports, Ethan stumbled upon encrypted files linked to Maya. They weren't part of the regular flight operations, and their contents hinted at something personal. Though the messages weren't explicit, they suggested a relationship that crossed professional boundaries. Ethan felt torn. He respected Maya's experience and skill, but his sense of duty wouldn't let him look the other way. Ethan knew the airline had strict policies against anything that could jeopardize its reputation. After weighing his options, he filed an anonymous report with the ethics board. He focused on the potential risks, careful not to make personal accusations. Ethan believed he was protecting the airline, but he didn't realize the storm his decision would unleash or how deeply it would affect Maya. A week later, Maya was called into a meeting with the airline's senior executives. The room was tense, and the tone was formal. They informed her that an anonymous report had been filed, accusing her of engaging in activities that could harm the airline's reputation. Though the details were vague, the implication was clear: her connection to Amir was no longer a secret. Maya remained calm on the outside, listening carefully as they explained that an internal investigation was underway. But inside, she was furious. She knew immediately who was behind this. Ethan's rigid adherence to rules and his moral compass had always grated on her, and now he had crossed a line. As Maya left the meeting, the weight of the situation hit her. Her career, which she had built with years of hard work, was now under threat. But more than that, she felt betrayed. Ethan hadn't confronted her directly or given her a chance to explain. He had gone behind her back, and she wasn't going to let it slide. Anger and determination filled her as she planned her next move. The next flight they shared was anything but routine. Maya and Ethan went through the pre-flight checks in silence, their interactions reduced to the bare minimum. Maya's anger simmered just beneath the surface, while Ethan, oblivious to her growing resentment, focused entirely on the task at hand. The tension was palpable, but neither said a word. It wasn't until they reached cruising altitude that Maya broke the silence. Her voice was calm, but her words carried an edge. "I know it was you," she said, eyes fixed on the clouds ahead. Ethan glanced at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked, though he had a feeling he already knew. "The report, the investigation. You didn't even have the decency to come to me first," Maya said sharply. Ethan's expression hardened. "I did what I thought was right for the airline." His tone was steady, but Maya wasn't convinced. "Right for the airline or right for you?" She shot back, her frustration spilling over. The rest of the flight was tense and quiet. Both focused on their duties, but the unspoken conflict hung in the air. Maya's mind raced, her anger now mixed with a cold determination. Ethan had pushed her too far, and she was done playing by the rules. Maya couldn't let Ethan's actions go unanswered. She felt betrayed, not just professionally, but personally. His report had put her career and reputation at risk, and she was determined to take back control. For Maya, this wasn't just about payback. It was about survival in a world that had never made things easy for her. She began researching her options, carefully and methodically. Late at night, away from prying eyes, She delved into the darker corners of the internet, looking for a solution that would make Ethan regret ever crossing her. That's when she came across a group called the Crimson Veil. Their reputation was chilling. They were known for handling discreet and precise acts of sabotage. Maya hesitated at first, knowing the risks involved, but her anger and desperation pushed her forward. Using encrypted communication, she reached out to them under an alias. After weeks of planning, she finalized a strategy that would be subtle yet devastating. Her next step was to ensure she and Ethan would be on the same flight to Nairobi, where her plan would quietly begin to unfold. For Maya, the line between revenge and justice had disappeared. The flight to Nairobi was smooth, but Maya's mind was focused on what came next. During the layover, she suggested a group dinner at a local restaurant, framing it as a chance for the crew to relax. Everyone, including Ethan, agreed. To the crew, it seemed like a simple night out, but for Maya, it was a crucial step in her plan. At the restaurant, Maya played her role perfectly. She was friendly and relaxed, blending in seamlessly with the group. As the food arrived, she watched for her opportunity. While the crew laughed and talked, she discreetly tampered with Ethan's plate, using a vial she had carefully concealed. Her movements were subtle, her expression calm. No one noticed a thing. Ethan ate his meal, unaware of what had just happened. Maya joined in the conversation, her demeanor as professional and composed as ever. Inside, she felt the weight of her actions, but she reminded herself why she was doing this. Ethan had crossed her, and this was the price he would pay. The evening ended without incident, and the crew returned to the hotel, none the wiser about what had just taken place. For Maya, the plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. The morning after the dinner, Ethan woke up feeling unwell. At first, he thought it was just fatigue or something minor from the rich food they had eaten. But as the hours passed, his symptoms worsened. Nausea, fever, and intense stomach pain left him barely able to stand. Concerned, a flight attendant called Maya, who immediately offered to help. Maya accompanied Ethan to a nearby hospital, presenting herself as a supportive colleague. While doctors worked to stabilize him, Maya stayed calm and attentive, making sure no one suspected her involvement. The medical team diagnosed Ethan with severe food poisoning, attributing his condition to something he ate the night before. Unknown to Ethan or the crew, the hospital staff wasn't what they seemed. Operatives from the Crimson Veil had already infiltrated the facility, ensuring there would be no evidence pointing back to Maya. For now, Ethan was in safe hands, but his ordeal was far from over. As Maya returned to the hotel that night, she felt a cold sense of triumph. Her plan had worked perfectly, and no one suspected her. Ethan spent the next few days recovering in the hospital. Though the doctors assured him it was just food poisoning, something about the timing didn't sit right with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his sudden illness. As he replayed the events leading up to that night, questions began to form in his mind. Maya, always calm and professional, had been unusually warm and engaging during the dinner. At the time, Ethan had thought she was simply trying to mend their strained relationship. But now, that shift in her behavior seemed out of place. It nagged at him, making him wonder if there was something he had missed. After his release from the hospital, Ethan returned to work but started paying closer attention. He began piecing together small details: Maya's subtle actions, her timing, and the odd coincidences surrounding the dinner. Quietly, he started looking into her movements, asking casual questions to the crew, and checking logs when no one was around. The more he uncovered, the stronger his suspicion grew. Something wasn't adding up, and Ethan was determined to find out what it was. Ethan's growing suspicion pushed him to dig deeper. He started retracing the steps of their layover in Nairobi, paying close attention to details he had overlooked before. He talked to restaurant staff under the guise of casual curiosity and reviewed the crew's schedules. While most of it seemed normal, Mia's movements during the layover didn't quite align with her story. Ethan's breakthrough came when he stumbled upon an encrypted message linked to an account used only during their time in Nairobi. Though the message wasn't addressed to Maya by name, the timing and context matched her movements too perfectly to be a coincidence. The more he investigated, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to fit. Then, Ethan uncovered a financial transaction tied to someone in Nairobi with known connections to shady activities. It wasn't direct evidence, but it was enough to confirm his fears. Maya had been hiding something, and it wasn't just a personal secret. It was deliberate and dangerous. Ethan now knew the truth, but the challenge was figuring out what to do with it. His next steps would decide everything. Ethan couldn't keep quiet any longer. During their next flight together, he decided it was time to confront Maya. As the plane cruised at altitude, the silence in the cockpit was heavy. Finally, Ethan broke it. "I know what you did," he said, his voice low but firm. Maya didn't respond immediately. She kept her eyes on the controls, but Ethan could see the slight tension in her posture. "I'm not sure what you're talking about," she replied, her tone calm but guarded. Ethan leaned closer. "The messages, the discrepancies in your story, the transaction records. I've seen it all, Maya. You set me up." His words were sharp, cutting through the professional facade she had carefully maintained. Maya finally turned to face him, her expression cold. "And what are you going to do about it?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with defiance. Ethan didn't back down. "I'm going to make sure the airline knows the truth. You don't get to destroy my life and walk away." The tension in the cockpit was unbearable, but both pilots knew they had a job to finish. They carried on in silence, focusing on landing the plane safely. Once the flight ended, Ethan wasted no time. He submitted a detailed report to the airline, backing up his claims with the evidence he had gathered. For Maya, the walls were starting to close in. Ethan's report set off a chain reaction. The airline launched a thorough investigation, and the evidence he provided left no room for doubt. Maya's connection to the Crimson Veil and her actions during the Nairobi layover came to light. What started as a quiet inquiry quickly turned into a major scandal. The airline acted swiftly. Maya was immediately suspended from her position, her access revoked, and the findings were handed over to the authorities. Within days, she was arrested and charged with endangering a colleague, conspiracy, and abuse of professional privileges. The news spread fast, and Maya's reputation, once a symbol of excellence, was destroyed. As the trial unfolded, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Messages with the Crimson Veil, financial transactions, and testimonies from colleagues painted a clear picture of her calculated actions. Maya, composed but cornered, denied parts of the story, but couldn't escape the facts. When the guilty verdict was announced, she was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, and her career as a pilot was permanently over. For Ethan, the fallout brought a mix of relief and exhaustion. Justice had been served, but the experience left scars he would carry for a long time. The airline, eager to repair its image, implemented stricter protocols, ensuring nothing like this could happen again. The story of Maya Cole became a cautionary tale in the world of aviation. Ethan tried to move forward, but the ordeal left its mark. While justice had been served, the betrayal and the stigma of his illness weighed heavily on him. Instead of letting it define him, Ethan chose to channel his experience into something meaningful. He began working with organizations focused on raising awareness about health issues and fighting stigma. By sharing his story, he found purpose in helping others face similar challenges. Maya's life behind bars was a stark contrast to the one she had built. At first, she was consumed by anger, blaming Ethan for her downfall. But as the days turned into weeks, she started reflecting on her actions. Counseling sessions in prison gave her the space to confront her choices and the damage she had caused not just to Ethan, but to her colleagues and herself. Slowly, she began to accept responsibility. Ethan's advocacy work gained recognition, turning his painful experience into a source of strength and inspiration. Meanwhile, Maya's journey in prison became one of quiet growth. Though their paths were drastically different, both found ways to rebuild their lives in the wake of betrayal, showing that even in the darkest moments, there's room for change and resilience.